I'm Bob Sherman, founder of Common Sense Wellness for Men. With me today is Andy Homball, a member of my church. Andy's been through a lot in his life, and he'll share his story today, the good and the ugly. Our intention is to help other men deal with difficult times in their lives and find ways to move on, building resilience and learning to cope with tough times. Andy, thanks for being with me today. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
I'm Andy. I'm 24 years old. I'm a college student, a fiance, and a survivor, I guess.
Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Lindstrom, Minnesota. Lindstrom and Forest Lake. My parents are divorced, so I grew up in both Lindstrom and Forest Lake.
Okay. And you live where now?
Oakdale, Minnesota.
Oakdale, Minnesota.
Yeah, not far at all from everything. I attend Century College in Maplewood, White Bear, and yeah, built a pretty good life so far for myself.
Okay. Where do you work?
I work at Target. I just put stuff on shelves or do whatever I'm scheduled to do at this point. So
Andy, you've been through a lot in your life, in just the few decades that you've been around. Tell us about the relationship that led you into some pretty dark times.
Sure. So I had been seeing a woman, and eventually we moved in together. And it was never exactly gentle. We argued quite a bit. We fought quite a bit, and then things started to sort of get physical and verbally abusive, and it kind of got to the point where there would be nights where she'd kick me out and I would sleep different places wherever I could. I never really never went back to my parents' place just because I was just sort of I felt like I couldn't, kind of, with everything that I had gone through, and it was, she was tough to be around, that's for sure.
When you say it got physical, what do you mean by that?
She would take things off the wall and throw them at me, hitting, kicking. She would be angry, and that's how she would sort of lash out. And there were a number of times where there was blood, my own. It got pretty violent, pretty severe.
And as far as mental abuse, what was that all about?
She made me feel like I was never right. So anything that I did, if it was cooking, doing the dishes, anything around the house or otherwise, it was just never quite like hitting the mark. So I would hear about it, and she would, "You're not doing anything right," and mixed in with a lot of different insults, things like that.
Okay. So, as I understand it, you were homeless for periods of time. In other words, you were not in the place where you normally lived, and you lived out of your car and sometimes in the woods nearby.
Yep. I slept at a favorite park of mine for a while. Slept outside at like baseball fields, outside underneath the stars. During the wintertime, I'd sleep in my car. And I'd pretty much always have a to-go bag in my trunk with deodorant, toothbrush, the absolute necessities, so that if I had to make a quick exit, I could make my quick exit and still make sure I got to work on time, if I worked the next day. Yeah.
So you had to miss some work sometimes as a result of it?
Yep. Yep.
So what went through your head when you were alone in those kinds of places?
Just fear. You feel, I was really scared, and it was almost like it was a culmination of everything, so much so that it was like I almost felt nothing, and it was like my system sort of would go into shock. And because of the lack of thought, I would shake quite a bit. Yeah.
So as you went through all of that, who did you turn to for support, and what did they do to help?
I had some friends that I would periodically turn to. None of them really knew the extent of the situation. My parents as well, I would turn to them because my parents have always been a huge part of my life. But I never really let them in on what was going on until everything was really over and I could move back home safely.
What kept you from opening up to your parents and your friends?
I didn't want them to get involved because I wanted to dig myself out of the situation. It wasn't their battle to fight, I guess. So I needed to figure out an exit strategy for myself, to do it on my own and do it on my own 2 feet.
You know, so as guys, a lot of times when we grow up, we learn, you know, man up, take care of it
Yep.
yourself. Was that going through your head?
On some really dark nights, that's where I would kind of go mentally. It was more of a situation where when you're a little kid and you're scared of something, so you tell yourself you can do it. It was sort of one of those situations where it wasn't that I didn't want to totally ask for help, but I needed to do it on my own to prove to myself that I'm stronger than the situation is, stronger than she was, truthfully.
So how bad did it get? Did you ever think about ending your own life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was sort of always a daily struggle where I would wake up and consider it, go on with my day, but it would always be sort of kind of like somebody's breath on the back of my neck. It was just always sort of, it was just there. And what actually brought me to leaving that situation was I was going to go through with it. I set a date, was in my car, the time of place and everything, and I realized that I needed to move on rather than take my own life. And everything sort of changed from there. I put the gun in my mouth, was ready to do it, and realized that that wasn't the route that I needed to take, because I had unfinished business and an unfinished life that I need to live.
Well, thank God for that. I mean, you know, some people don't have the courage to stop themselves there.
Mm-hmm.
Were you getting any help from anyone, any mental health specialists or anything like that at that time, or were you doing all this on your own?
It was just all on my own. I did a lot of reading, and it helps that I've always been interested in psychology, and now I'm a psych major, that I've always taken an interest in things, and as a person, I always make the best test subject. So I'm always reading things thinking, maybe this would help me, maybe that would help me. Yeah.
So you're a spiritual person. Tell us how spirituality became important in your life.
It started after once I moved back home to my folks' place. It was almost like an itch. I had an itch to do something, to feel something. So I would wake up early and watch the sunrise. And then that transformed into wanting to understand why something like that could be such a spiritual experience. I met my now fiance and she attended church. So I would attend periodically with her, and that gave me a sense of family. So spirituality for me has always been tied up in the idea of family and the idea of belonging and community, because for so long I didn't feel like I had that. So when I found it, I just totally latched onto it, and it's become a massive part of my life and who I am.
So as long as I've known you, Andy, getting outdoors has been important.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
I find a lot of freedom in the outdoors and in the open air, and I find myself being able to think a lot more clearly if the wind is hitting me and I'm not breathing in just air from the inside. It just feels a lot more natural to put your feet in some grass, walk on a path somewhere, and listen to the birds. Yeah.
So you and I walked together in the nature preserve where you were once spending a lot of nights in your car. How does that place make you feel today, and what kind of memories do you have of that place?
Today, that place it's almost a badge of honor for me, because I walk through that path and realize that I made it through that, and it's almost, it's my thinking space. If I'm really going through a tough time, or if I really need to get away from things, it's a short drive, and it's almost like a second home for me. So each part of a path, each part of the woods, I've had a different experience, and whether it's good or bad, it's made me who I am today. So it's a reflection of me, I guess. I'm looking at myself when I'm at Catherine Abbott.
What do you see out there when you're looking around today? What are the good things that you see?
Birds. The birds are something that I've kind of always treasured. They're so, it's like music. It's nature's music, and the wind. Deer. There's a lot of deer there if you go early enough, and life looks right back at you. And that's really, the older I get, the more important that's sort of become for me.
A lot of Minnesotans hate snow. What's your opinion of snow?
I don't mind it. When I was younger, I absolutely hated it. I hated the cold. There is beauty even in the snow. It's just, if you have to drive through it, my attitude might change. But I like it. Minnesota's my home, so I have to take the good with the bad, and the snow is just as beautiful.
So to keep yourself well today, what do you do?
I started writing in a journal. I started running. I used to run, but I've taken it a lot more seriously, and I follow a specific plan. I watch what I eat. I track what I eat. I watch my macros and things like that, and I found that through taking control a little bit of my diet, it gives me a little bit more control in my own life. So I have my own 2 feet sort of planted, here and now, and I can make a conscious decision. Reading has really helped me too. Reading, the men's group that I'm a part of, it's shaped me into a much healthier individual.
So what do you wish you could make more time for if you had more time?
Oh, if I had more time. I would have to say enjoying, when you're running, I'd like to make more time to enjoy being out of breath and enjoy exerting myself, because right now when I go for a run, it's typically I'm sort of on a schedule, so being able to go out and say I'm gonna run until I can't, and just enjoying breathing, like the more air I can breathe, the better I feel. Yeah.
So you and your fiancee, Grace, are going to be married this fall. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you.
How does she support you?
In everything. She supports me in, we talk, we're completely open with each other. We go for walks and talk nonstop. I mean, there's never a silent moment in our household. And I think that really helps, because for so long I lived in so much silence, and now I'm able to live out loud and a little bit more truthfully. And she helps me do that just by being who she is.
You told me a great story when we were down in the nature preserve about music and how you communicate with her sometimes through music. Tell us about that.
For me, sometimes I can't get a thought out that sounds correctly, so I'll find a piece of music that has lyrics that have a melody or something, and I'll send it to her and explain it to her that, okay, this is the chorus is what I'm talking about, and this is what it means, or the guitar solo, like the way I feel when I hear the guitar solo. Music is a massive portion of how I express myself, just through listening to it. I feel it on in such a deep way.
So does that include when you're angry, when you're sad?
Oh, yeah. That started, music became a huge part of how I felt and how I expressed how I felt a long time ago, because I found myself sort of shutting down emotionally when I had lived with my ex, and in order to feel, I would listen to music. And in order to listen to music, I would listen to it to the point where it's completely cranked up, and my poor neighbors had to hear the same song 10,000 times, mixed with me singing, and I am not a good singer.
Yeah, but it didn't stop you, I think.
Oh, goodness, and it still doesn't.
Yeah. So when you share your story with other guys, like in our men's group or wherever, what do you lead off with, and what do you want them to hear?
I just want them to know that men go through tough times and can still talk about it and still maintain a sense of self and a sense of masculinity, even though you get beat down. It's important to get back up.
And how do they respond when you tell them about these kinds of things?
They're really sweet. They understand, and if they don't understand, they ask questions. They're an incredible group of incredibly welcoming guys.
So, lastly, I'm sure that you have something else to share that will inspire our viewers to be better people and live meaningful lives themselves. What would that be?
Maintain a dialogue with those around you, even the people that you don't know, and just be friendly. Even when it's difficult, even when you don't want to be personable and it's very early in the morning, it means everything when you can smile at somebody or just be yourself in front of other people, because we're all important, and it's important to be yourself.
So I imagine working at Target in these COVID times, you see the best and the worst of people.
Yep.
And you've told me in the past that sometimes people can even lose it because the Target store where you work doesn't have the right shampoo. So how do you handle that?
Taking a deep breath and realizing that people experience things differently. And right now, especially during COVID, that we hold on to small things like hairspray, shampoo, as something that it's kind of become a part of ourselves. And if you look at it like, you know, that product is going to make her feel whole because that's what she can hold on to right now. I can understand that and I can deal with it. If I just take a deep breath, I can get through it, you know. It's fine.
When we came in today, you reminded me that the area where you live in Oakdale, Minnesota is not too far from the neighborhood where the police officer with the Minneapolis police force lived who suffocated George Floyd. What's that like?
You know, it was eye-opening to realize that it's kind of like, it's almost in your backyard, kind of, and it brings a sense of uncertainty to closing your eyes, which is kind of difficult to live with. It's difficult to live with for anybody, and for me it was especially difficult because I've lived where I feel like I can't close my eyes, so it just sort of brings you back to the way things used to be. So I found that I found myself having to look at pictures of my fiance and I, or when she's sleeping, or just like play with my cats a little bit more, just to regain humanity and realize that, yes, this is a part of life. It is outside my door, but here in these four walls, for right now, I am safe and I am home. So,
thank you, Andy. You've left me with a lot of inspiration, and I know you'll inspire other men. I appreciate you being willing to speak up and to not be that guy who just keeps it all inside of himself, but really opens up and says, I've been through a tough time, but I don't want you to be, so I'm going to share some things with you that might help.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Bob.
You've just met Andy Homball, a guy who gets it and has made huge changes in his life to be more resilient and live a life that helps others. Andy, thank you for sharing your story and your wisdom with us today. We all wish you good health and a life that's full of inspiration for others.